I've seen this happen where you keep adding features where there is no longer term thinking of like, okay, who is the customer I'm targeting? How do I make sure that I'm able to elevate that customer experience by not by also satisfying this. And sometimes you have to have the audacity to say no, this doesn't come to my, it is not me, I understand your requirement, we'll think about it in the future, but for now this is like a north star for us.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the If Then podcast. This is your host, Devo Ray, and today we are joined by Sameer Mangalampali, who's the head of engineering at Tellius. Sameer, please introduce yourself to the audience.
So my name is Sameer Mangalampali. I recently took on this role as the head of engineering at Tellius. um, in general, there were many paths I had, like uh, went through many roles in many organizations, and finally, I'm fortunate enough to be here to help Tellius, a startup that's in the BI analytics space, go from 0 to 1 or 0 to 0.5, wherever my journey leads with them, and to help them do good things with Gen AI. That's the charter I am on. In my past, I have had the fortune to work in Apple, Yahoo, Twilio. Before, I mean, I was actually part of the SendGrid acquisition in Twilio. I ran the data platform. Um, Prior to this, I also had the opportunity to build a data platform for vulnerability management in cybersecurity space for a couple of
Oh, wow.
years. So I went through many technologies, many things, but primarily focused on data space. That's the that's in a nutshell.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Sameer. Yeah, it obviously in today's world, being able to handle data appropriately is of utmost importance to most organizations. It's um, really exciting that you're getting to work on this at Tellius now. To dive into, I'd love to understand. So, what are the biggest set of challenges that you're working on nowadays?
So currently, I think Tellius is on a growing spurt, but they are also plagued by many of the bad practices that come with growing fast. So it starts from product management to product to engineering transfer. How do you translate a product to a engineering roadmap, to customer support? How are we enabling our customers to be successful? There are many broken processes. Currently, my focus is one step at a time to fix one piece of process to make things better. In terms of the challenge for me as of today is that how do you innovate in the Gen AI space while also being able to improve on process, right? So for example, ours, we don't have a very good way to see, whether there's a burn up of the engineer, or whether, or how fast are we launching a product. There is a big gap between the two. And this last 2 weeks we just have been like cleaning up our sprint, making sure that the processes are met. That's one big, my managers, myself, everybody has been working on trying to clean that up and make a better day for everybody starting, right? So that's what I'm working on right now.
Thanks so much for sharing a little bit about the current challenges you're dealing with. And you mentioned two things over there, right? One is being able to understand whether the team is potentially getting burnt out from time to time. And the other component being around, okay, are we really shipping software fast enough for our end users? So, given your vast background and experience, I'm wondering how have you structured the team, your team at Tellius today, to be able to work across these vast facets of things, right? On one side, you're trying to ship software to end users using very modern technology and Gen AI, etc. And on the other side, you also have to have enough room to be able to provide support to existing customers. So, how have you structured things?
So as of today, we have a concept like squads, which I think is quite popular nowadays, right? A squad is comprised of, in our world, we have like five, six squads, and those squads have either front end heavy or back end heavy. So where there's a lot of
Oh,
work being done by the back end teams, and there is support for the front end. So that's how we have arranged it. Arguably, I think still it's not functioning the way the rate at which we want to work, right? And the only metric that I have as of today is the number of issues that are coming, or the number of delays in the project, or mean time to those are the few metrics that I have. um, the one challenge or biggest challenge in that is that I think the execution is fine, but the planning that we do have other dependencies, which are, like, for example, design. That's only like done by a couple of people, but for their six squads, everybody wants to go at 100 miles an hour, or everything is at 100 miles an hour. Right? If we don't run at 100 miles an hour, we are not going to reach our end goal. So the challenge is like, so what? One of the things that we are bringing about a change is like, okay, nobody waits for anything, right? Everybody is
yeah,
running parallel. And if the thing that we are going to pivot on is, if there is a, fail fast is the main approach that we are
yeah,
taking. So the squads have established goals like, okay, you're going to do small, but if you fail fast, it's okay. We'll do some rework. That's completely
yeah,
okay to take, because it's not good to start everything at the last 2 weeks when we have to deliver a feature
yeah,
and wait for things to settle down. So one, process wise, we are bringing that change. Now the squads and the team organization, um, there's still a bit of challenge in that sense, where we have to reorganize the teams a little bit, where the key stakeholders who can make the decisions, who are much more closer to, are not at the level, are not being brought into the level to make the decisions. So for
mm,
example, we have front end teams and the back end teams, but there are people who are able to make decisions for the front end. They are not in the key stakeholders bucket. What we are trying to
mm,
do is move them into the stakeholder place, so that every decision is not like before at the planning phase itself. We know that this is what we can do, and all the key stakeholders give their inputs in, so that we are able to bring. So that's, there is some bit of reorganization that we have to do to
yeah,
make sure that at the planning itself we have the right place. And the second approach we are taking is, quite often most startups, the biggest problem is they somehow fall into a reactive mode rather than being
yeah,
proactive. Essentially what that means is, you missed a feature, so you have to track this feature. So in this sprint we are going to tag this feature quickly, right? Because I need to
yeah,
satisfy this customer. But that comes with a vicious cycle, that you keep adding features and you forget that there are these product pillars or product
mhm,
you know pillars that you need to focus on to enable your customers in a longer term.
yeah,
And this is, I mean, in many organizations I have seen this happen, where you keep adding features where there is no longer term thinking of like, okay, who is the customer I'm targeting, how do
yeah,
I make sure that I'm able to elevate that customer experience by not by also satisfying this. And sometimes you have to have the audacity to say, no, this doesn't come to my, it is not me, I understand your requirement, we'll think about it in the future, but for now this is like a north star for us, right?
yeah, yeah,
And being able to be true to yourself and
yeah,
understand that, that's the hardest part. And I've seen that at least in three or four startups where
yeah,
they struggle to make that, make that call that, hey, this is not me.
yeah. No, this is very interesting, Sameer. I'm curious because you mentioned a couple of metrics that you're tracking. I'm wondering with what, but this is a two-part question. What frequency with which are you tracking these metrics, and what sort of tooling have you put in place? That's one side of the question. And the second is, I can clearly see from how you're describing things that you're trying to action based on some of the data that you're collecting.
Yes.
So now, for the end stakeholders and all other folks involved, how are you also ensuring that we have actionable work items or accountability that is actually stemming from us looking at these metrics on a regular basis?
Yeah. So let's start with the first question, right? What is the frequency at which we take, and what are the things that we are collecting, and the tools?
Yeah.
So first and the foremost, I don't have our team is already like 60 people,
Mhm.
65 I think, but I can't bring in a new technology at this point to make any changes. So first and the foremost, what we are doing is we use Jira for everything. Okay. So what we are doing is we are doing a cleanup of in-house. We're setting up new labels, new setup, new processes, and that reporting is done on a weekly basis. But I usually try to. I don't. I think week is too soon. We try to keep it like a couple of weeks or a
Okay.
month even to get those metrics, gather that information, and share it with the exec team. Now, some of these are inactionable for most part. It's only like a metric because at this
Yeah.
point it was only like 1 month or 2 months of data. But what we some of the reasons why we are taking these actions is there are these repeated patterns that we are seeing, which have less metric driven but more insights into what happened in the last three
Hmm.
months or last 6 months. For example, we have onboarding of a customer experience, right? And when we have like Telia supports two ways: self-hosted and on-prem.
Hmm.
So the on-prem in the last 6 months have taken like more than 3 months to even sometimes 4 months as a end goal to enable a customer. Now, what we did is we looked at those 4 or 5 cases that we have seen that have taken long, and what we noticed is that there is a repeated pattern there, which is that you know we don't have a project manager who is helping these customers be onboarding successfully, right? So at the end it is somewhat somewhere dangling, some action items dangling somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Mm. And you can see clearly that there is a 2 week between communication there's a 2 week communication drop between the customer and us,
Mm.
right? And nobody's at fault here because actually the engineer has like, okay, I'm waiting on this. The customer's IT team is like, we are waiting on this, and the person who bought it is nowhere connected to the IT. At the end,
Yeah.
2 months later, he says, "I'm still not seeing any value out of the product." Right. So the way to streamline it is like what we have done is collected this data and then presented to the exec teams to say that, hey, guys, this is an opportunity missed from all sides. This is a, like you cannot have customer POCs and POVs for like 4 months. We cannot afford it. We are too small a
Yeah.
company to say that, okay, it's going to take 4 months. It's okay, right? Um, so we are like, now we have established a process. Like, okay, there is a questionnaire, there is a survey that the customer has to fill, and the main purpose of the survey is not only to educate our sales guys, our CSMs, everybody, but also to
Hmm.
educate the customer that, hey, this is a complex product you're buying. You're not buying some simple off the shelf, I click a button and it starts working. It's
Yeah.
a complex piece. Data is a complex piece, and be prepared for it. So, um, hopefully, that gives you a way we are looking at
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
and learning and improving on it, right? So, at least
No,
that's
this is really cool. This is really cool because you're essentially trying to come up with a model of enforcing accountability not just within your engineering teams, but also on your side, the sales and the go-to-market teams, as well as on the customer side.
yes,
Because ultimately, very similar to some of the things we see, like the buyer persona and the user persona is often pretty different,
yes,
and maybe there's also another party that has to actually go and set up the software.
yes.
So when dealing with so many different stakeholders, I can see why some of these challenges arise. Now, this is really cool. I'm wondering, Sameer, like, And we should definitely find a little bit of time at sometime in the future to understand a little deeper about how you handle the whole on-prem, self-hosted, etc.
Yes. Yeah.
All of the various deployment models of modern SaaS software. But how do you think about developer experience for your internal teams?
So some of the so actually I think um, there is a there are two three. So it depends on your organization, right? The whole thing is depends on your organization goals, right? The point where we are, we have a sense of urgency, unfortunately, right? Because we have to close deals, we have to increase our ROI. There's a sense of urgency, right? And I think there is also a built up lethargy in the company because what happened is we started about 6 years ago, 6.5 years ago,
Yeah,
and in that journey, um, the we pivoted a couple of times, and finally we found our footing like maybe 3 years back, and we started growing after that. Now the challenge is there are people who stayed back from the last 5 years.
yeah,
Okay, so the burnout is not because of the amount of work. The burnout is because it's the same thing. We're going to keep doing it, and so the burnout factors are not really because of this quality of code output, quality of that.
yeah,
Because it's completely personal at this point, right? It's personal motivation. So for me the developer experience is like, how do I the key factors that I'm trying to change is or trying to look for is there should be a motivation. And some of these motivations could be, having growth, or having technological growth, or doing things differently, or even feeling heard, right? Like feeling that okay, I have been
yeah,
heard because I've been here for five
yeah,
years and I've been sitting in my corner. So these are the current developer experience metrics that I am looking at. I know Dora has a few, like, quality, you have those, but in general, the current place where we are in, I think those will come after I
yeah,
fix the current um, energy problems within that. Like there is like a developer energy missing. It's like, hey, I have this Gen AI, it's a cool thing, so I'm going to be excited about it. That should have been the case if people were like, fresh. There is, but I think they have been through these kind of innovations over the last 3 4 years, that there's a there is a different kind of burnout, which is like
yeah,
same thing over and over again.
yeah, yeah,
So for that, at least we started off with this basic QBRs, like
yeah,
that we have established the leadership team, like the managers and the senior managers. To like I have two senior managers and six leads, or six. They're called leads, but they're pretty much engineering managers. What essentially they happen to do is, they are supposed to take these feedback of like, I have encouraged them to figure out a way to grow people, right?
yeah,
Grow people, or we have to move on from people, because the way we are looking at is like in a startup, I don't have time for people to, like, I don't have cash to burn on people to say,
yeah,
okay, in 3 months, yeah, he will start producing. No, that doesn't work, right? So
yeah,
essentially, either we have to figure out a way to move on from them, or they have to come in that. And
yeah,
now we have to identify that potential, and whatever KBRs are primarily, like number of lines of code they have committed, number of times that they have, like, basically what we are doing is we are looking at what is their feature output, like how much of contribution towards a major feature versus.
yeah,
So when people commit to a feature, we feel that at least there is a potential of growing them to next level within the next
yeah,
6 months. So that is one. So those are a couple of metrics that we are doing so that we are able
super,
to grow them to the next level. The
yeah,
idea is people have not grown. Like people have been senior software engineers for like 4 years now, right?
yeah,
So idea is we want to grow them to leads, or next levels as fast as
yeah,
staff, senior staff, principal, as fast as possible, or cut ties, right? And
yeah,
bring new blood in so that there is
yep,
a whole channel of energy change within the organization.
constantly, yeah, as you keep getting to work on newer challenges. Yeah, I can see totally how getting to work on a new problem and actually being able to bring it to fruition would like take you through this life cycle, right?
Yes.
And having seen that myself in myself also.
Yeah.
No, this sounds solid. Now, to move a little bit, Sameer, from talking about the organizational side of the house to maybe a little bit about the technical challenges that y'all are working on right now. I know in our past conversation, you had mentioned at Tellius right now how you are getting to work on a couple of things, primarily around as the customer base is growing, which
Mhm.
is leading to a bunch of internal tooling and processes having to like scale alongside. And you had also mentioned some bits around the data warehousing challenges, which
Mhm.
is very close to your background as well. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about that, and I'm sure our audience would as well.
So I think it's a well-known problem that you know data engineering is not first of all it's not for the faint-hearted, right?
Yeah,
It looks very clean on you can read blogs, you can read everything. It looks very nice and rosy, and it's very easy to do as a
the
first.
dashboards are always pretty.
Yeah, but as soon as you start digging deeper, as soon as you like, for example, today some of the customers we have more than different business views, or views, or what we call views are basically like a cube, olap cubes, like
Mhm.
250 to 300 olap cubes that are created for.
Whoa.
So now, how do you ensure the scalability of it? How do you ensure the
Yeah,
performance? And some of the challenges are inherently that when we started this journey, we had some product built, and that's a kind of a legacy product. So some of these come with, there is kind of, one of the customers was asking me like, all our data needs to be there here, right? Just all our data. You just have to create all the data models and make sure that it works, right? So, and those are the asks that we are getting, and on top of it, because we are trying to sell a product, there is no like saying no to those things. We are going to accept it. So now, and I think it's the same problem everywhere. I have not seen a problem which is different in any company. I have been there. um, the only way to do this would be to have, first of all, data. There is no one size fits all. It's like, you have to have custom solutions. You have to spend the time. You have to educate. So some of the things I like as a concept is, data products, data mesh. um, those are key concepts that I believe in. And as a technology, we're bringing in tooling to be able to enable us to do those things,
yeah,
and slowly move away from this hellhole of like dependency trees between different data sets from different data
yeah,
sources, refreshing it, or syncing it, or having them be able to munge data across or transform. We slowly build that platform first, so we can actually, one of the things I think that as an organization we fail to do is, what is the best we can do, where can we work best and where cannot we work
yeah,
best, right? So that means that if we cannot do everything, we should know that, and we should be able to move it out of our system
yeah,
so that we can maximize the benefit to the customer or anybody. Even engineering will feel great because I don't have to deal with this weird problem. That's a one-off solution, one-off problem. Like for example, there's a customer who wants to do some kind of a turnover ratio on some specific metric, which is very hard to generalize.
yeah,
And if we start building that into the product, it becomes a messy thing for everybody else. And to solve that, we will write some if else condition in code somewhere to make that
yeah,
happen. But then after 2 months, it becomes orphaned code because in the new feature, we might not even consider that, right? So, um, both ways, simplifying that, making sure that, and adopting a good design pattern or a data pattern that will be
yeah.
applicable for our organization, I think is very fundamental to a good data architecture. Like, you should have principles like, Right now I'm not getting the principles, but you can assume that there are whole bunch of principles that you have to adopt. That, for example, tracking users, like
Yeah,
what kind of users are you looking at, right? Who is the person who's going to benefit out of this? What kind of um, who is authorized to be able to do this? Or what is the capability of the product? Keep it simple, right? Don't bring fancy stuff into the thing. So for that, for example, we are adopting airflow as
much
much as
airflow. Nice.
dbt or some metrics layer, so we are able to define our own way of doing it. It's not dbt per se, but at least we want to adopt the schema for dbt and then have some layer of our own, build our own layer of technology that
Yeah.
helps simplify
No,
things.
this makes a lot of sense, right? Because the modular architecture fundamentally, I think, leading to your previous comment, like when we don't have to, well, as engineers, oftentimes we also have this inner quality bar, and at the same time, we also know that we have to keep shipping software. So invariably we build time bombs that we just set in different places, and your internal metric says, I'll hopefully be able to go and fix this time bomb before we actually hit it, or
Yes.
this mine that we have laid. And whenever there's too many of those, that's when that burnout feeling, etc., starts to crop up.
Yep.
I'm wondering, Samir, like, how do you understand, or how do you, like, you have a reasonably large engineering team for a startup company of 60, 65 folks. How do you understand if the current architecture patterns that you all have, if that's working well or not, and when it might be time to go and invest in a broader change?
So this is this is more personal. I have not yet executed in this org. I'm still working my ways through people to start seeing the way we look at it.
Yeah.
The one of the things is, like, don't ever, like, don't build a feature because you have to build a feature. Or don't think, like, I mentioned product pillars, right?
Yep.
So as an organization, you have, like, okay, some capabilities that you want to go after, right? That
Yeah.
helps a persona. Like, you want to target the execs,
Hmm.
and you want to be able to provide a great way of building a dashboard for them, right? Now, your north core might be that exec should come on a mobile phone and say, okay, I want this dashboard, and you should be able to provide it, right? That could be your north star. There's a journey towards that, right? And you start building things as you go towards build making that happen.
Hmm.
And now you start thinking about the current tasks that are coming in the pipeline, which could be like, I need natural language support for some alert, right? So you put it there, you put it on the map, you see where it fits in, which version, which release can it fit in. You target that, and based on that, now you make technology choices, like, because your north star is there, your north star, what gets you there. So you evaluate whether the current architecture is going to fit that need. If it doesn't fit, then you try to make, again, the fail fast strategy comes there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Think, basically, I think I have it. I mean, this is I know the title of this book. I read it. It's like, think fast, think slow. So in the sense, you should be able to do a prototype quickly to see
Yeah.
if it meets all your needs for that. And then beyond that, you have your long term roadmap. You think slow towards making sure that that happens, and start chipping away the things, right? This way, when an engineer is looking at a long term vision, he understands that this is the path I'm going on, these are the things that I'm going to,
Yeah.
instead of this, oh yeah, I can put this code in, it is going to work, I'm done.
Yeah. 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 No, this is great. Maybe I know we are also getting close to time, but I want to ask you one question because I think you touched on it a couple of times during our conversation. It's like we all operate in pretty constrained environments, be it like those constraints might be related to dollars, it might be related to time, etc.
Mhm.
As an engineering team, as the head of engineering, how do you think about demonstrating ROI for your team, for your group of managers, leads for each of the squads. I'm curious how you generally report up ROIs for each of these groups up to executive teams.
So I think the definition of ROI again depends on organization to organization.
Mhm.
The stage at which we are, the ROI is how many customers have adopted this new technology, or how many customers are ready to pay if we sell this, build this technology, right?
Yeah,
So that's the ROI, right? So the way we make sure that it goes, it's, it's kind of weird because it was not done this way in the past. But what at least I am trying to do is, as an organization, I mean, not me, but as I'm working with all my managers and everybody, is that we have come up with a way to say, okay, this this is our goal for this quarter. So
Mhm.
we're going to deliver like 25% less uh, bugs this quarter. We're going to add like 5 new innovation features as a goal, right? And this is, or we have also have, like, I think the third goal that we have is, repeatable engine, repeatable AI engine. What that means is, like, how many customers can adopt this Gen AI story.
Yeah,
And I'm very fortunate actually in that sense that, I have had good experiences with a lot of customers. They have gone from saying that, okay, you don't they have not thrown us out so far.
yeah, that's
They're
a win.
they're keeping us in the loop. We've gone from one customer in Feb to about 8 or 9 customers in the pipeline asking for these Gen AI capabilities to be enabled. And so it's been a great ride. And I think our metrics are going to be good, right, in general. So I think that's the way I measure ROI for us at this point, because
Yeah,
it's very hard to say, what there are no other metrics at this point.
yeah. No, that's fair. Since we're also at time, I think we should wrap this up. Thank you. Thanks so much for coming on this episode of the podcast, Samir. It was fantastic catching up with you, and I'm certain we'll stay in touch.
All right. Thanks, Deepo. It was great talking to you. Thanks. Bye.